So if you have just y equals x minus some number to an exponent, okay, let's fill in the blanks here. If the exponent n is something, the graph is tangent to the x-axis. So tangent to the x-axis, we're not talking about sine, cosine, tan. Different one. So context is important. So if it just touches but does not pass through, that's like a U shape. That's a parabola shape. So that happens when the exponent is even. Okay. Most common one we've been doing is squared, right? Sorry. I hope the microphone's still on. Anyway, even. If the exponent is something, the graph passes through. So it kind of gives it away. So if it's odd, the graph passes through. If it's odd and one's an odd number, but when it passes through, it'll pass through in a straight line, right? If it's an odd number greater than 1, so that would be 3, 5, 7, 9, 11, etc., then it'll have a change in concavity. That means it's curved and then curved up. So that point at x equals a, we call it a point of inflection. And again, you're going to talk more about that in calculus next semester. But that point where it changes concavity is called a point of inflection. In this case, it's the a value, it's the x-intercept. Okay, so that's just a reminder on those. So let's take a look. This note sheet is exactly like the one I think we gave you last year. Okay, so it's there. I think it's all the same. So again, we're just gonna go through some of it. You're gonna finish some of it on your own. Hopefully you didn't throw out your books from last year. Okay, no book burning parties in the summer. I hope you have to keep. You're going to be writing an IB exam, right? And it's based on everything in high school. So technically they say not grade 10, but really you can't use grade 10 to graduate exam. So it's on everything in high school now. So save your books. You probably still have access to Schoology, which is good for when you get to your exams. All right. So this one, the x-intercepts. So there's -3 and +1. So the corresponding factors are x plus 3 and x minus 1. Okay, the shape of the graph at x equals -3 indicates a something exponent. So notice how it's actually a maximum there, right? A relative maximum. So that's U-shaped. So that's an even exponent. Okay, the shape of the graph at x equals 1 indicates it's a zigzag. It's a change in concavity. So that's an odd exponent. And it's odd greater than 1, right? Actually, so odd greater than 1. The graph of the function can be written using this equation. And just note here, most times when we give this on a test or something like that, we'll say use the smallest appropriate degree, right? Because even numbers, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, we're going to say use the smallest even, which would be 2. Okay, so that's going to be 2 here. Now we can't use the smallest odd because it does zigzag through there, so that would be 3. Okay, so the 0 or the x-intercept has the multiplicity. The factor doesn't have the multiplicity. So just think about the terminology. On your diploma exam, they will be asking you, they will have a written response card. They are doing more and more where you have to explain the math, okay, in words. So we started last year getting you to do some explaining on some of your tests. The odd question, right? One on, at least on a few tests.
Did they explain the difference between a 0 and a root cause?
Yeah, that was one of them. I think there was one about compound interest or something like that. So you're going to have to use words. That's not an IB thing. Yeah, it's part of IB. You have to do that too. But that's an Alberta education requirement that you are describing, okay, explaining things. So just be aware of the sort of the terminology. That helps you explain if you know the terminology better. So multiplicity is of the 0 or the x-intercept, not of the factor of the brackets. Okay? All right. Okay, so let's do one of these together. Okay? Again, this very well on an home exam, they can ask you to sketch, but they want to see that you're putting all of that together. It's not going to be on graph paper, but necessarily unless it's a pretty basic one. It's going to be on a sketch, on a X and Y axis, and you just have to label and have them in appropriate locations, but not necessarily scaled out. So what are the zeros here? So 1/2, -3 and 4. Multiplicity, so look at the exponent on that bracket. There isn't one, which means it's a 1, okay, which is odd, okay. This one has exponent of 2, but that's a multiplicity on that 0, and that's even. And this one, 3, which is odd. Y-intercept, please don't expand out the polynomial, okay? Your y-intercept, if it's given in factored form, then put x in, okay? That will go away. So you'll have -1 times 3 squared, which is 9, times -4 cubed. What's 9 times?
576.
576? Okay, I'll just put 576. And it's going to be positive because that's a negative times a negative. End behavior. So end behavior, if we were to expand that out, the highest degree x term would be positive. So it's a positive end behavior. Sometimes you might describe the graph as starting in a certain quadrant and ending in a certain quadrant. So certainly actually in Math 30-2, that's more how we describe the end behavior. In this case, positive, if you say positive, I'm assuming you mean the end of that graph, okay? The end behavior. Start and end, I would specify that, or so here, because what is the degree of this? We actually didn't even state it, did we? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So it's an even degree. So this is going to start in quadrant 2 and end in quadrant 1. All right, it's going to be up here. So we've got -3 here, 1/2 here, and 4 here. Okay? So we're going to be ending in quadrant 4. So I just put a little arrow there for my own purposes, and an arrow there because it's an even degree. Okay? You can write that down somewhere. Okay. And then I think about, okay, so I tend to start it at the end, because that's where or you can start at the beginning, but this one has a zigzag. That's the hardest to draw for most people. So I'm actually not going to put the arrow there. I'm going to go down and zigzag on that 4 as best I can. Try not to, sometimes we get a little bit lazy and we just kind of do the zigzag above. It's got to change that concavity at 4. Then at 1/2, it is on the degree of 1, so it's going to go straight through. Now, is it perfectly a straight line? No, but at that particular point it is. But you're not going to change, have a change in concavity. So you're just going to go straight through like that. And then at -3, it's even. So it's got to have that U shape. So I've got to come up and then come back down and just touch at that 3. Use pencil. Doesn't look quite right? Erase. Okay? If you're asked to sketch things, use pencil on the test. Don't use pencil. Fun fact, on your diploma, on your IB exams, you have to use pen. Fun fact. Okay, and not an erasable pen.
What? Okay, that makes no sense.
So
if you make a mistake, you have to scribble it out?
You have to cross it out, and then you get,
Why did they do that?
well, a couple reasons. They used to have to mail them in.
Oh,
so smudge.
Okay.
You couldn't use a gel pen or a smudgy pen. You want to use a ballpoint pen. Now they get scanned. So it needs to be really, when you scan pencil, like I've done it a lot of times for solutions and stuff. When you're doing a mass scan, you're not checking everyone's paper to see that you can see it all. So pen scans way better than pencil. And again, when it's going through the scanner and it's kind of a smudgy pen.
If it's a erasable pen, it could erase it.
Yeah.
Because it's rubber. If you just rubber
Yeah. So. Okay. So. There's the next one. I'm just going to read through here and see. I'm going to leave that one for you to do. So go to the next page because really, more often than not, we're going to get you to come up with an equation of a graph. So turn over to the next page. Okay, so you do need to remember about the A value. I think there's a note at the top there. Okay, so when you are finding the equation of a graph, you can find the x-intercepts pretty easily and get the factors and get the exponents on them because of the multiplicity. But you do want to check and get the proper A value, kind of like you just did with Tracking Map 20 with parabolas. You did that a lot. You had to find the A value. So just don't forget about it for higher division polynomials. Okay, so sometimes it'll be an A value 1, but not necessarily all the time. So let's do the first one because always look at the scale. Okay, so notice here, the grid markings are actually not ones, right? This is -1 and this is +1. Okay, so that's actually, looks like a half, -1/2, right? So that's going to be 2x plus 1. No fractions in your brackets. So that's going to be -1/2. It's going straight through, so no exponent shown, or you can put a 1, but you don't need to. Next one, x minus 1. Okay, it's U-shaped. I think we were asked here to use the lowest possible value of the exponent. So that'll be squared. Okay. I'm going to put an A value. I know that that A needs to be negative because it's ending going down and to the right. Okay. But maybe it's also got a stretch in it, right? So if I put -A, then you might forget about the negative or you might counteract it. You just put A and then substitute a point in. It will work its way out. Okay. So what point do you want to put in? Well, this would be the nicest point. Sometimes we'll indicate it. Sometimes you have to look for it. Don't guess on a point where you can't tell what the decimals are. Find one on a grid crossing. Okay. So grid crossing there, that's -3 for y. It's a y-intercept. So the point here that we're going to check with is 0, -3.
Didn't you just use one of the x-intercepts?
No, that won't get you the A.
Oh, no, wait, you use y-intercept.
Yeah, that's what I do. Okay, so there's not a whole lot of space, but enough. So -3 in for y, 0 in for x. We'll get those terms to be 0. So that's going to be 1 times negative 1 squared. That's going to be 1. So really, A is negative 3. Okay. So this is really your final answer on that one. Okay, so always look at the scale. That sometimes tricks students a little bit in terms of your x-intercepts. Next one, I'm not going to leave this for you to do. You find your factors, choose a nice point. So I would either choose this point or this one. I don't see any on this particular graph, any other nice ones. Okay. And then again, common types of questions are where it's given, information is given in words to you. So question 4. So leave 3B for now. You're going to do that on your own. And question 4, determine the equation of each polynomial function in factored form, lowest possible. So tells you a cubic, so you know it's degree 3. Notice how there's 3 zeros. So you know the multiplicity has to be 1. And that's why multiplicity, the word isn't even in there. Okay? So again, don't forget about that A value. Y-intercept of 16 has coordinate 0, 16. So that's what you substitute in. Okay, so negative 1 times 2 is negative 2, times negative 4 is 8. So 8A, so A equals 2. Then always rewrite it. If you do not put y equals, and you're asked for the equation of the function, you'll get a half off. Okay? Think about the equation of a function is if you're going to graph it in your calculator. Well, what are you graphing? Y equals blah, 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 blah. So you need to have y equals. Okay? Okay, so we're running out of time. So let's skip to D. Fifth degree polynomial function. Where's D? Hello. I don't have D. What the heck? Okay, let's not do D. No, I'm done. So we're going to do C. I don't know, D lost. Yes, yes. A double zero question, a double zero is the same as a multiplicity of 2. Okay. Now, he actually uses the word multiplicity more frequently, but that's what a double zero is. Okay, so we're doing C because I can't find D. So, quadratic function that is tangent or just touches the x-axis. Okay, it's U-shaped there. That means it has a multiplicity that's even. Not necessarily 2, but we're going with lowest degree. You're going to pause and you're going to. So just touches the x-axis. So we need an A in front. X minus 5 squared. Okay, we don't know what the y-intercept is, but we know a point. This is really like work that you did in Math 20, very beginning of Math 20, quadratics. So now negative 36 goes in for y, 2 goes in for x, and solve for a. That's going to be 9a, so a is negative 4. Again, rewrite it. And leave it in factored form. Only the odd time might we say, find the equation of this, and then express in simplified form, right? Maybe once on the test. Otherwise, leave it in factored form. Because it actually tells you a lot of information, more information. Okay, so that's where we're going to stop it for today. All right, in terms of your timeline, there are some textbook questions. You're going to finish what we didn't do. Okay, solutions are on Schoology for the whole thing. There are videos there. Not obviously, this video will go up. It won't have all the ones that I didn't do. But there's a video that has all of it from last year.